sequencer it is. And bring up my chat so I can see that. All right, the video's already boring. All right, let's make it more interesting. Let's jump in. This is the project that I've been working on so far. You guys, again, are more than welcome to continue working in your worlds for right now. I mean, I don't know how much time we'll have for reviewing of homework, but next week we'll see what you did with Quixel plus more camera animations. So feel free to build off that, and then when we assign the character introductions assignment, then you can start over and just like get rid of all these crazy ideas that came from the initial brainstorming. So we did make a cinematic really briefly, and that we touched on the idea of throwing in a camera and animating it into position. All right, so we can lock to the viewport, so I can see the preview of the animation, and this is what we did. We were revealing these characters. Ideally, they would be walking down and discovering these old pillars for the first time themselves and looking in awe and surprise. All right, so this is a very simple sequencer. It's just got the camera right here, and then the camera cuts is a way. It's called a director track. It's a way of choosing which camera you're showing now. Okay, this decal, I don't know why that's in the sequencer. That was probably a mistake, so we'll get rid of that. All right, but anything can be animatable. You can even animate sounds, right? Like if you don't see the birds, you can still animate the audio of a bird going above head, and then you feel that left to right movement of sound. Like everything can be animated and keyframed. But what's cool is that at the end, it's not 2D video; it is a 3D world that you're inside of. All right. We made a camera cuts track, but let's go ahead and start from scratch, just so that we're going from the very beginning and not skipping any steps. So I'm going to close the sequencer, or I'll just make a new sequencer. Here's cinematics at the very top, and we're going to use a level sequencer. There's an idea of making a master sequencer. Don't worry about it. A level and a master you can make a level into a master sequencer. Just keep on using level sequencer, and we'll keep it simple. All right, so this is going to be called, we'll call this one long take today. And I'll put it in my assets folder, and I have a sequencer folder, and I'll also append the word sequence so I can find it if I do text search. So, long take sequencer. Cool. So let's start from scratch, and you can add in a camera right from here. Which will set it as the current camera cut, or as we saw, I could take a camera and throw it in, and it creates this camera cuts track, which again is this director track. I'll do it this way just so we can see a variety of ways. And again, I'm going to show you a lot today. You don't have to do everything I'm saying. You're just showing you the breadth of what you can do in sequencer, and you choose what's important for your story to tell. So it created a camera here for me. It is a cine camera. These cine cameras do have all the settings that you would see on a regular a physical camera in a studio. We're not going to go into those settings today. We will go into them in depth next week when I assign the character introductions. But all this stuff is, again, animatable and adjustable, and you can really get some really beautiful cinematics going. So our camera's right here. We are in cinematic view. First of all, we're piloting the camera, so if I move around, I'm moving this camera with me. Right? That's a big mistake that some people make, is that they don't eject once they have the thing done, right? And they take it with them. So just keep in mind that we're either piloting the camera by saying right-click pilot, or locking to the viewport with that little button right there. And then we have our cinematic viewport, which we enabled here underneath the different views, right? And we can also switch between our different cameras as well from here, and just go to town and start animating them. I'm gonna go to the one I just added. Then again, we have our thirds. If we want to add a grid, crosshairs, different grids, even custom things you can make if you want to align things. Cool. And then let's go ahead and do a couple of things I like to do to set up my scene. I never want to animate anything that's before 0, And then the scene ends right now at 150 frames, which is otherwise with 30 frames per second, that's 5 seconds. I can change this to look as time code, or this could just be seconds. If it's more interesting for me to say, oh, okay, this is 5 seconds. That might be easier to understand. So feel free to change those. And then if your take gets longer, feel free to expand how long it is, and then just remember to drag your camera cuts to the end. Right, and there's a lot of snapping going on. That's this horseshoe, or magnet, I should say, right here, is enables and disables snapping. Snapping is good. It helps you things align pretty easily. I don't want to be able to put my cursor outside of my play area, so let's keep cursor in playback range when scrubbing. And so now when I drag, I just go to 0. I like that, not being able to go below 0. So that works for me. And then we have the idea of keyframing. There's a couple of keyframe settings. We could say keyframe this now, or we could say key when things are changed. So if I make any change, it's automatically keyed. That can also lead to mistakes. So I usually like to manually keyframe things. So by hitting either the key frame, or let's see, with this selected, if I took this camera and I moved it, that's it. Let's add an initial keyframe, and then we'll go to the end. And let's see if I move it. All right, that doesn't do it. Key when changed. Turn it off. There we go. There is a keyframe there. Let's turn it back on and see if I move it in the middle. Yes. So when you with that button pressed, it'll auto keyframe. Again, I don't like doing that setting, so I'm going to delete it. I can navigate between my keyframes using these little arrows. And I'm going to go to the center, and let's delete. I can also ensnare it like that. All right, so I'm piloting it, and I'm going to basically recreate that shot that I already had before. Let's put it back at the center and get rid of my keyframes. So we're going to be tracking in on them, discovering the thing, right? So they actually we'll track with them. How about that? We'll keep them on the right frame so we don't really see too much and reveal too much of what's happening to the side. So let's go ahead and put the transform there. And it's keyframed. Again, a transform is position, scale, and rotation. I could be more surgical and just say specific axes or specific things, vectors like location, rotation, if I want to be a little bit less sloppy. And then I'm going to move backwards, tracking with them. And there we go. I'm going to turn off the auto keyframe. So we're tracking with them, but they're not moving. So if we want to animate them, we need to put them in a sequencer. All right, so let's take thing 1, throw it in. And you'll see that we do have these plus boxes right next to the new skeletal mesh, and it's for an animation. So we can add in some of the animations that I previously had brought in. And we have cat walking forward. Cool. So I'll bring that forward. All right. And so they're in place right now. They're not actually walking forward. But what we can do is this is a loopable animation. If I just drag it out, it just continues to loop for the duration of the shot. And let's keyframe them and their transform. Let's do the whole thing. It's fine. They're going to start here, and they're going to come with us. Kind of try keeping them in frame. We're tracking with them. And now let's keyframe that. All right. So it's a little hairy. Let's move it back up. I am going to do auto keyframe so I can move quicker. And then we could see that there is a path that they go. Of course, this area is rounded, so I'm going to go in the middle and kind of lift them up a little bit so that they're not going through the floor. We can always eject and see how that path is going. You don't seem to go through too much I feel like they're moving their feet a lot though for how fast they're walking, and it really, as you can see at the beginning, they're moving the legs are moving consistently, but the animation, the transform is easing in. So we actually have a different kind of curves on these keyframes. I'm going to select my track here, and then we have a curve editor. And I can see, if I select location and make it fill in the frame, let's make it fill in the frame. These keyframes, well, we're not seeing because they're not moving that much. Let's just select this one. Let's just select location on Z. There we go. You see how it's you can see how it's curved. There you go. The green probably has some contrast, and that means that it's easing. It's easing in and it's easing out. We want this to be linear because we want it to be like we're just starting the scene and they've been walking. They're not starting to walk and ending to walk. They're continuously walking. So instead of being a curved one, let's go ahead and make that linear. But we want to do it for all of the location. So we'll select all that way, and make it linear. Now when I go back to them, we'll see that they're walking at continuous speed. That's good. And I can adjust, how far they're walking or how fast they're walking. Right now, if I hit spacebar, I feel like they should be going further. What I can do is just move my keyframes forward, and that way they do it quicker. All right, so there's a lot of features with manipulating keyframes. And again, if you've done After Effects, this is like kind of the synonymous thing. Right, so this person's walking forward, and let's put this person on the ground and throw it into sequencer as well. And we'll give it a different animation. It might be nonsensical, but we just want a little diversity. Let's do the one that's not crazy broken. That is the one that's crazy broken. All right, so now we have this animation track that we did from the Radical Motion. And I have properties for all these tracks, and I want to change it out. Let's try the other one. Is this also going to be crushed? Looks like all of them are deformed. Oh yeah, that looks great. That could be a big reveal for later on. we'll see if we come back to that. But right now, this person's by themselves, checking out the world. All right, so we have one camera that's tracking in, and then we want to then enlarge our space and do another camera. Again, there's a lot of shortcuts you can use with sequencer. I'm going to move the sequencer to, let's make it 10 seconds long. All right, so with this at 10 seconds, I'm going to drag it out, and it's going to snap to it, hopefully. Yep, at 10 seconds. At this point, I need to take my camera cuts and drag it out longer, so it's for the whole frame. And then I could potentially, do a different animation for them. I don't have any loaded in right now. I'm gonna start doing some organization. I want to put these guys in a folder, and these will be my avatars. As you can imagine, when you add in a very large world, it starts getting pretty busy in the sequencer. So you need to start grouping things. I'm also going to make a folder for my cameras. Rename cameras. And this one go there. Now, when they stop moving halfway through, I want to make a cut right here, and I want to cut to maybe their perspective. So let's go ahead and let's make this track go for the whole distance. We'll just make it go further. They go further. There we go. That sounds good to me. And here we'll switch cameras. Now I'm going to do something that I think it was Victoria was doing for their homework, which was putting cameras on people's heads to get their perspective, get their POV. It's another way of doing kind of like a random camera. So we're going to add a new camera to the world from our cinematics. And then I'm going to parent it to the catwalk avatar. And when I do so, this window flies open. It says, yeah, you want to parent it, but do you want to parent it to just the root, or do you want to parent it to any of the bones in the body? And we're going to choose head. And then it's offset a little bit from the head, so if we zero it out, we'll see exactly where the head bone is. And we're seeing what they see, but it looks like we're sideways. So let's rotate that 90 degrees. Great. So we're seeing their POV, and let's drag this into our cameras folder. You can always rename things if you want to. All right, we call this head cam, POV, whatever. Yeah, sure. Did that say it broke it? Let's see. No, it still finds it. And then we're going to simulate the head turning. Even though we don't have the animation, we won't be any of the wiser. So let's add a keyframe for transform here. And then they're going to slowly look at the pillars. Let's rotate. Like, wow. Wow. They're actually way too close. Wow. Looking up. All right, so keyframe there. So if we lock in to our camera, we can see that this is actually them walking down and then looking up or looking over. But if I go to my camera cuts, that's not there. Actually, nothing's in our camera cuts. So I need to add these cameras in there. Let's go to the very beginning and let's add in camera 1, which was just called cinematic camera. There we go, and it's in camera cuts. And then I'll forward to the end of the track. I'll find a keyframe that gets me to exactly where I make the end of the animation, and then let's bring in the next camera, which is camera 7. So now our camera cuts, and that's the whole point of the camera cuts. All right, so hit spacebar, we say we're tracking with them. What do they see? They're revealing something. Oh my goodness, they see this whole world from their perspective. We have multiple cameras going into one track. Cool. So here's how you kind of build a scene, and then hold down my control button and my mouse wheel and just make it smaller. Right mouse button over, and let's continue building. Drag out the red end mark, and we can continue to go. Oops, I drug out the camera cuts, but I need to drag out the red ending mark. Okay, so this is a good start. We have a scene we're slowly building in. Maybe some other stuff is happening. Let's say maybe they notice that this pillar, which is super old, and there's an earthquake or something, it falls over. So again, anything can be animated. Drag it in your sequencer. This one is let's put that in the cameras. So this one could be static meshes. I can add another folder for static meshes. Rename. And put it in there. So I like to keep everything really organized to a fault maybe. So at this point where this camera cut happens, we want them to be looking at the actual camera, the actual thing might be falling at that point. So find that frame where we do the cut, and let's do a transform keyframe, and then I could potentially roll it over manually. But there's a lot of tracks here you can mess around with. I can make it invisible. I can make it attached to something. So there's a lot of other things we can do. Even create triggers for blueprints and that kind of stuff. I'm going to check real quick on the stash mesh component, and I want to see if there's additional tracks for that. I could potentially. I'm off script here. I can if let's see. I can static mesh. I can switch out the static mesh. That's interesting. But I was looking to see if I could start simulating physics and have it fall over. It doesn't seem like that's an option right now. Nope. Okay, so we'll make it animate over. At this period of time, we'll go to the transform. We have a keyframe there already, and it falls over for the duration of that take. Which ends right there. Rotate. Timber! Great. So they walk forward. As we look, it falls. And maybe we'll change the camera angle so that they're following the animation of the falling. Let's go to the end keyframe. And we're piloting it now. Let's just navigate to look at it. There it is. And it's auto keyframed. So like, what's that? It's falling. Whoa. Dude. Okay. Cool. So that's how you create a scene. We have a camera cuts. We have a sequencer. And then when I hit play, though, it's playing the other one that we already had. The other one, that's because in class last week, this one called Discover, I have it auto playing. If I have this off and I hit play, no sequence plays whatsoever. So you need to tell a sequencer when to play. And auto playing from the very beginning is probably the default for making like a movie content in your game engine. One thing I'm going to do, and you guys might again think I'm too organized, but I like to make folders for everything so I can find stuff. You can imagine these worlds get very, very big with lots of things in them. And what I'd like to do is you make a folder with everything selected, and you can say 00 cameras. And that way the things I'm going to play around with are at the very top of my sequencer. So cameras there, maybe have one for folder for sequences. So we have this sequence and this sequence. And I can call this one 01 sequences. And this is, put blueprints in 02. And it's a good way to be able to find things. Everything I want to mess around with is up top. I'm not going to mess around with these cubes so they can just hang out down there. So keep things organized. It might help you out later on. Okay. It's dangerous to pilot a camera with auto keyframe on. You can definitely destroy your tracks pretty quick. But another thing we could do is trigger the sequence on with a blueprint. And we haven't really talked about blueprints. We're not going to do much in blueprints, but there's no time like the present to show you just a simple interaction in Unreal, so you guys know how quick it is to program, like how you open a door in a game. You get to the door and the door opens. What is that? That is a invisible trigger that triggers a sequencer, right? And it can be a very elaborate sequencer, have particles and all that kind of stuff. So let's trigger this animation with a trigger. So do it with blueprints. Over here on the left side, we have a couple things. We have one that's called box trigger. Trigger box, I should say, actually. Trigger box. And it's just an invisible volume. And when you go into that volume, you make it the things happen. Now, unfortunately, it's invisible, so we can't really see it for right now. It's because it's supposed to be invisible. You're not supposed to see the box that's opening up the sequencer. But for our intents and purposes, we want to actually watch it while it's in the game, so we can actually hit it. We're not looking all over for it. The box trigger doesn't let you be able to see it inside the world, so I'm going to select it and delete it. And I'm going to do the very same thing, but it's just called something different. It's called a box trigger instead of a trigger volume. A box trigger lets me be able to not have it hidden in game. What is the difference between visible and actor hidden in game? You can use them both in blueprints, and they're both like for toggling things off and on. Hidden in game means I want it to be so if something's visible but hidden in game, it means that I want to see it before I hit play, but when I hit play, it goes away. Things like box triggers. But if you don't want something to be visible at all, it means like I'm not even dealing with it at all. I don't even want to worry about even seeing it in my scene. I'm not using it whatsoever. But for right now, we want to be able to see it so we can actually hit it. So if I hit play now, it's actually there, and we could actually hit it. But we have to make it do something now. And that's where we get into blueprints. And we can resize this. It has its own like scale. Units are in centimeters. So this is 40 centimeters by 40 centimeters. So you resize it to make it easier or harder to hit. And I'm going to tell you guys about context sensitive. So context sensitive means that anything that is selected in your world outliner, Unreal knows how to do things with it in blueprints. So to prove a point, we're going to do our first level blueprint. And level blueprints are great because they allow key presses, and it's really a great place to debug. But whenever you find yourself doing something repeatedly, you need to turn it into like an actor blueprint, so that you're like, if you're doing a light switch but you're making 20 light switches, you don't need to be copying and pasting the code in your level blueprint. You need to be making a standalone blueprint that's a light switch that that goes around. We're not going to get into that too much, but this is great for now. Level blueprint. It's just a giant grid. And there's 2 nodes here. Anyone who's done like processing or JavaScript or whatever, you might know that when you start off with an empty scene, sometimes in your IDE, you might notice that there are 2 things already on screen. It'll say like void setup and void draw. This is giving you the same exact thing. This is event begin play. Well, not really. Event begin play means it happens as soon as you hit play. A void setup would be something called a construction script. There isn't one for a level blueprint. But essentially, yes, you have your 2 blocks. You have things you're going to set up on event begin play and things that happen on your tick. And your tick is relative to the frame rate of your game. If your frame rate is super slow, your tick's going to be super slow. So just keep that in mind, is that it's all being driven by the frame rate. And if I'm running 90 frames per second, things are going to move a lot faster on that. If you want to drive things that are always the same speed no matter what performance is, you want to do things like run things on like your computer clock time or things that are never going to change. But in general, tick is how things happen. But we're going to do an event. These are red. Red nodes are events, which means they send events out. And indeed, these pins are execution pins. So you'll see it'll shoot out an execution when I hit play here, an event begin play, or when I do an event from a trigger. My box triggers here, if I deselect it and right click, it wants to talk about the sphere. But if I right click on this trigger box, it wants to talk about the trigger box. You can actually even just drag it in if you want to do stuff with the trigger box. We, on the other hand, though, want to create an event with the trigger box, and the very first thing says, make an event for trigger box. And we want it to be about collision, right? Because game engines know about physics and collisions, and they're always checking for these kind of things. So we want to know 2 events. We want to know when we're beginning overlap, and there's an event. See, it has a red, and it has execution pin. And we want to know when we're ending. All right. So let's figure out let's make sure this works. I'm going to print string. This print string is going to say the word hello on the top left of my screen if I go into a trigger box. I'll keep this open, and I'll debug. I'll say I want you to debug this. So look at my level blueprint called main. And you'll notice that when I go forward, it triggers it, right? So it's visually showing you in the blueprint when I'm overlapping something. So that's how you kind of visually debug blueprints. And as you can imagine, when you enter something, that is its own event, but also when you leave something, that's also its own event. So what I want to have happen is, I don't know, our stories are getting mixed around, but let's make it so that when I go into, let's say I'm flying somewhere unrelated to the story, I'm searching for my own thing outside of this world. I want to maybe turn on a light when I go in here. Let's add in a light. I have to spell light correctly. A point light. Beautiful little point light. I'm chasing this light. When I go in, it's going to turn the light off. And then when I leave the box, it's going to start my sequencer, right? I'm chasing this light. I get there, it goes off. And then what's going on? And I turn around to my friends, and then I see the cinematic of my friends who are discovering this pillar that's about to fall over. I'm holding down Alt and clicking this node, and it deletes it. Beautiful. And I want to do something with this light, so I should drag it in and do something with this light. And so everything that's in this details are things you can do inside of blueprints. I can make the intensity grow. I can change the attenuation, all the different settings. I want to look at the visibility. I just want to turn it off, right? So let's just drag off here. If I look at this box, it says context sensitive. This is everything inside the engine that you can do to a light. It's of the 6 gigabytes of engine code that are blueprints. These are all the functions that you can do with lights, and it's all C++. It's all using the same terminology or learning pseudocoding of C++ by doing blueprints. But we can kind of stumble onto interactivity by just using words that we see in details. I want to deal with visibility. So let's look up visibility. And already I can see I can set visibility, I could toggle visibility. So great. This is all about getting values and setting values. So we're going to make something happen. So I want to, let's go ahead and set the visibility. And we have the point light. The point light, if you look inside of here, it has a component that is a point light. The point light is a point light actor that has a light component on there. And so that's why it says there's an actor and the persistent level that has a light component. And we're going to toggle the visibility. New visibility, this is a Boolean. It's a checkbox, it's a 0 or 1. And we want to say yes, be visibility. And if there are things parented to it, we could say propagate to all the things that are parented to it that are our children. All right, so this makes it turn on. But we want to make it turn off. We're going to say no visibility. All right, so we go in our box. And let's just make sure that works. All right, so this box is, again, it's going to be visible when I hit play. Let's just adjust this slightly to the right. Let's do this. How about that for right now? And we can visually debug it, compile, save, and move forward. There's a light right there. Let's try to grab it. Oh, it goes away. You can see it executing. We're coding in the Unreal Engine. And so the one thing I want to have happen is that, like, I'm going to look away and be like, oh, guys, I was going for the light, but guess what happened? And I wanted the ending overlap to trigger that sequencer, right? Keep on doing it over and over again. Now, if we wanted to have a field of lights, we would create a class blueprint that would be this same code, and then each object would be an instance of that class, which I could show momentarily. So what do we want to do? We want to have the sequencer play. Those are just very human words that we understand, right? So my sequencer, I put at the very top. It's called long take sequencer. In my main, let's just drag it in. And what do we want to have the sequencer do? We want to have it play. If I search right now, it's going to be, oh, actually it's selected. If nothing's selected, it doesn't, it's just going to bring me references to, I don't know, the whole entire engine. Right? This is anything, if you ever get bored, you just want to read every single function in the engine, here's your book. We want context sensitive selected, and I want just things that I could do with a sequencer, and we want to play. And of the things, let's see. Well, let's see. We want it to play. There we go. I don't know why I wasn't showing it earlier. And there it is. Just play. We can do tons of things to it, but we just want play. Cool. So when I chase my light, it's going to then switch to this camera, which is going to watch the person, and the person's going to watch the thing fall. Great. So I'm going to go ahead, hit play. Oh, guys, I see a light over here. I want to... Oh, wait, it turned off. Guys. Oh. Here I am, actually. I'm an invisible ball. We'll deal with that in a second. And there's my cinematic. Cool. Making a movie. It's also interactive. We're using a gaming engine. That's fun stuff. That little ball thing is because I don't think I have a what is that called? A player start. No, I do. Let's see. Where's my player start? Double click it and find it. It should be hidden. That thing that was flying around is called a pawn. It's the camera. I can do a little. I could do a little quick little blueprinty thing on my begin play, and say set again hidden in game. Set hidden in game. Let's take off context sensitive. Set hidden in game. There we go. And what do we want to have hidden? We want to have the player pawn, which is called the pawn. We want to get a pawn. Get player pawn. And now that'll be invisible. Little trick, little secret there. Or you can just be a flying orb in your project, which is also fun. So I'm flying around. I'm going to find my light. My light goes off. Oh no, what's going on? I leave, and we have our sequencer, and I don't see myself as a giant orb running around. Cool. Other things that are worth noting is that we also have key presses. All right, so I can say 1, and I get the 1 button. And I can make that orb be invisible on the 1 button. Flying over here. Turn it off. And I'm floating there. I hit 1. It disappears. All right, so key presses also. Cool. All right, some other things that are worth noting and definitely relevant for our project is maybe we want to have some shots around the lake, right? It's sunrise, and we want to get some dolly shots or some crane shots. So it's worth knowing that there's actually underneath the cinematic, there really is some camera rails. This is that thing in Touch of Evil that they had they had to cover up with tarps and props. It's a little dolly track, and it has a node here. This little point right here, and you can build. I think I'll hold down Alt. Let's see. Nope, I just Alt made another one. I can select it and I can extend it. Let's Control. Let's see. How do I grab that node? Do. And what's cool with the dolly is that it creates splines. It creates really smooth curves, and that might be easier than just freehand animating things. There we go. So I can drag it longer. Or I think I can hold down Alt now, and I make another node, right? So this node can all be to the side, and it curves it. So I'm making this great little snaking camera path along my lake side here, and it has this handle here that can affect the curve of everything. All right, so that's my curve offset. Come back here to this node. So yeah, we got our own little studio here of dolly tracks. But where's the camera? There's no camera here just yet. Let's add in another camera. Let's put this in my cameras here. I can also right-click on things and just move it to folders at the very bottom here. All right, let's do one more camera. Put it somewhere near. Put it in my cameras. And then we parent it. And in the same way we did the camera on the head, we zero it out. And if I go back to my... so we don't want it to be that way. We want to look across the lake. So let's rotate it across the lake. All right, and seeing those God rays. All right, that's cool. So we're going to pan and truck at the same time. Let's add in this camera and its rail. To the sequencer. And the camera is going to rotate. So let's get that transform. And it's going to start when the other one ends. The other camera ends. So we're going to make it start right there. There's your keyframe for it. We got a lot of interesting stuff going on, so let's drag this out for 15 seconds. This definitely warrants 15 seconds of timeline. And this camera, which we can pin right here if we want to just keep looking through it like that, for this amount of time is going to rotate from that way to the other way. There we go, to right there. Looking over the expanse of our lake. It's auto keyframed, so we see that it's going crazy. We want that to be 207. Let's go over to there and make this 207. It was like over rotating. There we go. Now I got a nice little pan, but it's not going on the dolly. Well, that's on the dolly track. It's got the dolly, the rails, and it's the current position at rails from 0 to 1. So at the beginning of this take, let's put in a keyframe there. Current position on rail, keyframe, and at the end, we want it to be at 1. It's done the whole thing. Auto keyframe. So now this is our shot. It's trucking, and it's panning. Pretty cool. I want to make it tilt up a little bit more. The framing isn't, I don't need that much lake. Well, I guess maybe if somebody's swimming in a lake, it'd be more interesting. But I can also go to this transform and say, I'm not really doing anything on Z. Let me just rotate. Let me delete my keyframes on Z and rotate it up. Or actually, it'd be rotate, not location. All right, so I could do just single axis stuff if I wanted to. This is fine for right now. Good. So I don't know if you saw, but I definitely saw. There's one more thing here that we haven't played with yet. And yes, it is true. There is an entire jib arm inside of Unreal that you can use. So now we have a crane shot. Now, I happen to know that that we were talking about. We were talking about the vertigo effect and everything. So which was on a dolly. They were zooming out, but but we also talk about Touch of Evil, and Touch of Evil was a crane on a dolly. So we could do a Touch of Evil shot if we take the crane, parent it to the dolly, and parent the camera to the crane. Crane, camera. So now, if we watch this animation, the crane is going from 0 to 1. We need to zero it out. Crane, zero it out. So the crane is moving on the dolly. And then the camera is on the crane. So what can we do with the crane? Well, what can't we do with the crane? So now I'm going to select the crane, and it has its own different settings, like pitch and yaw and length and all that kind of stuff, so we can make it longer, right? And because it's a software, it can be infinitely long. It could go to space if we wanted to. It's also got a yaw, right? So we make it go or rotate around. So maybe I want to rotate it like that and start there, keyframe that, and then by the end of the scene, it's rotated all the way around right there, and that's auto keyframe. So now it's doing this movement. That's cool. But maybe I want to get a little better vantage point. I want to boom up, right? So let's add a keyframe at the very first for pitch, and at the end, I want to see the entire world. Let us pitch it up. So now our shot starts low and looks up high. But this camera seems to be pretty hard to navigate now. Like, all these things are moving, and I just want to look at something. Right? I don't care about trying to make it a keyframe. I want it just to be intelligent. And so what am I going to look at? Maybe we want to look at the sun. We want to look at something over here. Maybe we want to look back at this stuff. So if I go to my camera setting, let's delete these keyframes from our camera. Underneath transform, we're not worried about it anymore. All right, so the camera does, just follows that dolly. But we want to look at the pillar that's falling, let's say. So from all the way over there, take this camera, and there's a thing called look at settings. And I can just check it, or I can use this little dropper, and I could drop it on those things. Let's just look at we want it to be, it's looking at this thing that just fell. Cool. Let's go back to, that's the ancient stone temple. All right, so ancient. Cool. And then you have to enable it. So now our camera, no matter where we're at, is looking at that stone falling. Of course, you might want to frame it better, right? You might want to have it offset slightly. So we want to include maybe our people on the left, so we would rotate it to the offset it a little bit to the right side. There you go. This way. There we want to keep on the right side potentially, or maybe we want to get more of that sun in there. So we'll go this way, and so it'll always be a little bit off. There we go, framed there in our scene. And then let's do something stupid with our crane, and let's make it go really close. So let's add in the arm length. Let's go back to this keyframe. Arm length, and come to the end. And now we're going to do a like a smash, right? We're going to go all the way along there, and go up into space. And it's always framed nicely. All right, maybe this is the biggest nonsense shot of all time, but you understand that anything's kind of possible, and that's why we're having fun. We're watching this happen. It's completely ridiculous. And I do believe, and I haven't really checked, let's see, if I move this around, does it change? So our dolly track is now a little bit closer to the scene, and it's still doing its thing relatively to where we wanted it. Great. reveals the sun. That's kind of cool. Cool. So we have a crane on a dolly on a camera on a crane on a dolly, right? It's a Pizza Hut and a Taco Bell. It's fantastic. So yeah, we have key presses. We have cameras on heads and body parts. We were triggering boxes. We're triggering visibility. We've discussed hidden in game. We've discussed how you add different camera cuts. We need to add the camera cut. So let's do that. We're coming back to the beginning of this shot, and let's add in the cut right here for I do believe it is called Camera Actor 25. Great. And so now we have our crazy crane shot, POV shot. We have to lock it in, and we can see walking, stone, crane as the sun rises. Pretty cool. We've looked at animation tracks for avatars. Those can be blended as well. I just don't have a really good animation to blend it with. But if you have a second animation track that's good, that's not... Actually, this could be really interesting. All right, so we're going to... So we have this... let's get out of here. Let's take a look at our avatar. This is going to be fun. So this is one of that where it was all squatty. You remember that? That was a mistake. It's the this one. All right, that's like a nightmare. Well, or do we want to use this one? This one could also be a nightmare. Let's use this one.
Yeah, that one.
This
one's. That's like, just make it massive too.
Yeah, it's just gonna be scary. So let's do that one instead. I'm gonna delete this track, and we'll add in the track for the other one, animation, giant one. Right there it is. And the camera scales because it's parented to the thing. All right. So if we get in close now, and we look at, let's do it. Actually, what we'll do is this is going to be the crane shot, right? The thing's going to fall, and it's going to unlock some sort of mystical power that's going to make our character get crazy big. This is like how I do all my homework. I'm like telling myself stupid stories. I'm holding down shift at snap right there. But this one's a loop, remember? We can, well, I don't want that shot to be all janky. Let's do it. Okay, we'll blend into it. All right. So we're going to move this back a little bit, and then we'll add in another one of the walking sequences. Oops, animation. Walking forward. All right, so walking forward, holding down shift, it snaps there. Bring it over. And this is what I want to show you. This is the whole point. Is that I can actually crossfade the animations. And I don't know if you can see there, but it's blended. So what we should be able to do is see this poor woman get big and squatty on a curve. So that's pretty cool. So we're watching that from far away in our crane because it's terrifying. Like, wait, what happened over there? It can happen slower. So you just kind of move these around and transition these animations and stuff. So that's fun as well. Let's see, where can I grab the transition? Yeah, so we have the length of it, and then how the curve is. It could be more of a linear curve. So all that kind of stuff. And then what's a new feature, and that what's amazing, and this is something that only Motion Builder and Maya could do kind of before, is that you could imagine that you want to transition on specific bones. So you have somebody who is doing a walk cycle, and then you want to blend on the fact they're pivoting off the right foot. You can choose which bone the transition happens on. This is more of an advanced use case. It's good to know, but this is something that's brand new, and it's a huge feature that you could say, I want the right foot on this one to match the right foot on the next one. Because it used to like scoot all around, but now I could say, right foot on this. It's really important that my walk cycle, what I'm ending on my right foot, and my next one I jump on my right foot, I want those two to match at the end and at the beginning. So good to know that this is here. I'm really excited about it. It used to be something you had to do definitely outside of the engine. It's a new feature. Okay, great. So let's see. I have a list of things. I've told you, of course, you could set. I haven't, but you can always get values. If we want to, we can go from our event tick, and we can get the. We're watching right now the catwalk forward scale, or we're watching animation scale. Let's see. Is the head POV? Is it scaling? Oh, or something scale. Well, something's getting bigger. This went from 1. I wanted to try to see if I can print a value, but I just want to. The idea is that we can get values as well. So I'll just cheat and grab my camera and throw it in here. And when I'm debugging, it might be helpful for me to see where something is in space. So I'm going to grab this camera that's on a dolly, throw it in, and then on my event tick, I'm going to print string. This is a string. This one is going to have a transform. It's going to be get world. We'll get a vector, a get world location. All right, this is its location in the world. And then I can print the X, Y, and Z, right? This is a vector, is a 3 value. It's like an RGB, or X, Y, Z, a pitch, roll, yaw. But I just want to know how high it is. Maybe it's important for me to know because I have a ceiling in my studio. So I'm actually going to split this up and just get my Z. Because remember, Z is up in Unreal. Print, and print it every frame. All right, let's watch this. Let's watch this gloriousness. We'll hit, let's come over a little bit closer. Actually, let's go back to our viewport and make sure we're looking at our camera cuts. We are. Great. And then I'm going to, am I locked in? Let me actually just come over here so I can be next to my trigger box. And we'll start the show from scratch. Hit play. Looking for my light. Light. All right, to start my sequencer. That's happening. We know that thing happens. And now let's watch our crane. And as our crane goes up, we'll see that this number on the left side will increase. So we're getting values and printing it to screen to debug. There we go. And at the end, it just ejects us, which is another setting. You can say, don't eject me. Keep me on the last frame if I want. Great. So the last thing I want to show is we've talked about instances and of material instances, and we've talked about parameters, and we want to mess around with the parameter. Obviously, you could mess around with anything that's in your details panel inside a sequencer. The material parameters are kind of hidden, so I just want to show you how to find them. And let's find something that has a parameter we want to change. I think these spheres had parameters, and I also think they roll away, but we'll deal with that like this. We'll take off simulating physics. And this element 0, this is our material. It's like an array, so it begins with 0. If there's 5 materials, there would be element 0, element 1, all the way through 4. We go here, and we have color, and we have like the exponential fall off, right? Let's just try to add an exponential fall off for now, or color, and we can animate that in sequencer. This could be glow. That's a really popular one. In fact, let's just make it glow. All right, let's just go into our parent, our base. Again, everything is based off of this parent material, and now we're going to add the ability for all our spheres to glow, which is the emissive color. I'm going to right click and just say convert to parameter. No, actually, we know what color it is, so I'm not worried about that. I'm just going to create a new scalar parameter. So I can type in S and click for scalar. Scalar meaning a single versus a vector, which is a 3. We just talked about that. And this one should be called glow. Glow will start off as 1 because that is the default emissive color or default emissive value. And then we are going to multiply by our color. So we're going to make our color go bright. Save that. And so now our color has this value called glow now. The instance has inherited that property. Boom. And so in this final shot, when this crane is going up, we're going to make our sphere glow. Drag it in sequencer. We can add a keyframe for transform. And then now let's go find that that parameter. That's the hard stuff that I want to show you. So it is on the static mesh component, right? Because there's a static mesh component. And then on the static mesh component, it's called element 0, right? Remember, that's the material track or material slot. And the parameter on there is called, any of these would work, we're going to do glow. We're going to do glow, I said. And now glow is here and keyframeable. So it starts there. At the end of our scene, maybe it rises. Comes to this, whoa, came way out. Came way out. In the center of the world. It got bigger. Drag all 3. That's not going to let me do it. I mean, it will, but I'm going to scale. Right here, I'm going to lock them all together. So when I move one, it moves them all. Make it get bigger. And then as it gets bigger, it's also going to glow more. So let's change its value to 50. Or change its value to 100. There's some other properties that can make it glow a little nicer in the base material. I forget what it is. It's kind of like make it a light source. Emissive is also an area light. That's kind of a new thing as well. When we go back, it would actually make things around it glow. Purple as well. See that? It's making like the kind of everything around it glow. We're going to leave it up here. And that's our final amazing animation. This thing gets super big. Super big. And I don't know, I think this poor person who's discovering these pillars might be screwed. This looks pretty scary. Yeah. Alright. So that's there. We were making things glow on a track. And let's see. We haven't really talked about lighting. I guess you guys obviously understand that lights can glow and lights can be toggled on and off. So, for instance, this light, we turned it off with programming, but then within a sequencer, we could probably turn it back on a track. Let's see. Let's do that. Kind of a hodgepodge. I'm not asking anyone to make anything this complicated. I'm just showing you kind of a lot of things you can do, and I'm sure that some of you are having the metaphorical lights go off in your head about all this stuff. So we're doing point light. Let's just say let's find the track for visibility. Oh, look at all the things we do with lights. Intensity, no. We won't worry about it. This is too much. But we can make a light. Maybe we'll put a light that's on here. We'll take a light, point light. We'll parent it to our sphere. Zero it out. And then change the color so it matches. and at the end, we'll make it also super intense. Yeah.
You might have to increase the range because it's a point light.
Yeah, look at that. It was inside. Exactly. So, let's go ahead and make it the attenuation much bigger. Source radius. It might be also be inside something. I don't know. We're definitely in experimental land right now, for sure. We'll counter paint. Complementary colors. There you go. You see a little bit, just right there. Anyway, just trying to show you all the things you can animate, lights and all that kind of stuff. There's ways of doing global parameters that we can get into another time, but I just want to make sure that I talked about all these things. Yeah, there's some other cool stuff. I remember I had in the syllabus terrain party. It's a really cool way of getting actual terrains from real places if you want to set your location in a real place. And let's see what else was there. Another one was moon kits and solar textures. Like these are ways of actually like downloading 360 equirectangular images. I think the max is 8K for Unreal, so let's go down to this one. Maybe it's more now. And so if we want to, also since we're playing with suns, let's go ahead and make a moon. It's going to be a sphere. It's way up in my sky, so we can make planets this way. Make it huge. 500, 500, 500. That's no moon. Yeah, it's super big. Let's do 50. By 50. And let's bring in the texture. I put everything in my assets and textures folder. And our naming convention is to call things T underscore whatever they're called. So that is our style guide. Imports it, and then if I just drag it onto the moon, it'll make a material automatically. And then there, now we have a moon, because that's an equirectangular texture. Like the projection is distorted and stretched at the top, and precise at the center. That's like a 360 video. And of course the moon glows, so let's change this material so that it's emissive, and we can give it its own multiplier called glow that multiplies by the color. And one thing I normally do when I make emissive textures is I make them so that they're unlit, like a TV screen, like it glows, it emits light. But as we know, the sun has a dark side, and it has a shadow. So I'm going to keep it default lit. That way we can have a dark side of the moon. So we'll keep it like that, but we definitely make it glow as a default value of 1 so we can see it. And there's our moon in the sky, creating these cool occlusion god rays. All right. That was it for my long take for both the long take in the game and the long take that is on OBS that will be uploaded to the demos channel of our Slack. All right. Any questions? Obviously, there's lots of topics here. Is anything? Everyone excited? Everyone is clear? And I go ahead and stop recording.